So this is going to be part 2 of how I came to the Lord. As I was sharing with you, I was going to college. This was at Toledo, Ohio. By that time, I had the seed of the spirit that gripped me when I was in my early teens. I had the stars that had ministered to me, a feeling of destiny, a calling of purpose. Just wasn't sure how to get there. I was intrigued by these philosophers in my intro to philosophy class because they were seeking things of deeper meaning, things that were meaningful, such as purpose, such as identity, who are we, such as intrinsic worth, or is there such thing as an intrinsic good or evil nature? All these things fascinated me. And quite frankly, I wanted more. I sensed that's my calling was going to be the pursuit of that type of knowledge and information. However, the problem is there's no money in that type of thing. These guys were like nomads. These guys were, discussing these things out in the public arena, debating each other. And so it was a great seed in me. And after 2 years of college, I joined the Navy. And ultimately, before I get to my ultimate destination with the Navy, while I was in boot camp, which is an 8-week period, I had a break on a Sunday. We would get some time off. And I remember somehow I got a hold of a little mini Bible. I think maybe they had them available or gave them out. I can't remember which. But I felt called to go to a church service. They made church available. And so I just felt so inclined to go. I don't know what it was. It had to be the Spirit of God's leading. I remember going to this church service, and all I remember of it were 3 or 4 gospel singers, young black men whose voices were like the angels from the heavens. It was like heaven opened up, and I just remember being bawling like a baby. I just remember the Spirit of God coming over me. The music was beautiful. I was just bawling my eyes out under the influence of the Spirit of God. I sensed the presence of love, and I can't even tell you if there was a sermon preached or what happened. I just remember I was basking in the radiance and feeling of that goodness. But there was no heart change. There was no gospel preached. I can't even tell you what happened to that Bible after graduating boot camp. But I did end up going to Pensacola, Florida for my A-school training. My boot camp was in Illinois, and in my training of 3 months, I really just was living like a product of my culture there. I remember getting blacked out drunk a few times with a couple of the guys that I was hanging out with, and I just remember waking up all black and blue and beat up, and it was just product of my culture there. I was into working out. I remember running and being in pretty good shape there. But the end of that came soon. There was no spiritual advancement in my life there. But ultimately, as it turned up, ended up being stationed out in Hawaii, the island of Oahu. And that, after a few months, is where I met this gentleman named Dan. Dan was from Rochester, New York. And I just remember him dressing very well, taking care of himself, always being in a good mood, having an aura of hope and promise and excitement about him. Quite frankly, I was irritated by it, and I wanted to know what was going on with him. So I started hanging around Dan, and remember one day I ended up in his room, and I saw this book with gold pages around the edges, and the pages were gold around the edges of this book. And I said, "What is that book there?" And he said, "Oh, it's the Bible." He's like, "Have you ever read it?" And I said, "No, I haven't." He said, "Well, you need to." And I actually just connected the dots because I respected him already. I knew he was going places and doing things, and I wanted what he had, and ultimately I saw that that book had something to do with it, that Holy Bible. And so I had all these experiences that were seeds in my life leading up to the culmination of this point. I would actually eventually, now here in Hawaii at the age of about 18 or 19, end up going to church with Dan, getting my own Bible, and breaking open the Bible was like opening myself up to an entirely new world, a new dimension, a new voice, a new source of information. I was just excited. I was stoked to start reading the Bible. I just remember devouring that book. I was uncomfortable and intimidated, yes, Genesis to Revelation, but I just remember saturating myself in the book, being at church as much as I could, listening to the Bible as much as I could, and that's where it all began. That's where I made a profession of my faith in Jesus, and that's where God really put his hook in me and led me down the road to where I'm at today. Some 27 years later or so, here I am. The Lord revealed himself to me, and I'm so blessed and excited to be called a child of God, to be one who he loves, who's forgiven of sins, and a minister of righteousness, minister of reconciliation, and an ambassador of Christ in this world, a mover and a shaker, a warrior, a saint, a holy one, a believer, and one who's ordained and promised and has a hope and a plan and a future, just like Dan did. And now I'm excited just to bring the spirit of revelation to you, the spirit of the knowledge of Christ, the prophecy of Jesus Christ, the wisdom of Christ. And that's my service. That's who I am as a servant. I'm a servant, therefore I'm serving. I got to wrap this up, but we'll keep this thing going. Blessings. Talk to you.